Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel BandysBooks. Today we're here for Banned Books Week with the Banned and Burned book tag, which was created by Sophia Mare Studios. This is such a great tag. It is 10 questions and it dives really deep into the topic of book banning and burning, both in a current context and in a historical context. So I figured since this is the week to celebrate banned books, we would go ahead and just jump into these questions and start talking about it. So question 1 is, which books have you read that have been historically burned or banned? There are an ample amount of books that I have read that have been either banned at different periods of time or been banned in specific communities. Sadly, I don't think any of them deserve to be banned. And some of them, just to name a few, I have right here available. I have The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, which was banned because it depicts the rape of a young man. I have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which was banned for violence. And I have All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which was banned because it depicts a young gay man and his experiences. It does talk quite a bit about race and issues that are affecting the Black community and the LGBTQIA community. If you'd like a really in-depth discussion of this book and the issues around banning it, look up here. I actually have like a 15-minute video going into depth about this particular book, about why it's been banned and what that means politically here in the US. Another book that gets banned frequently that I've read is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Same thing, this one deals with women's rights. It is about a brutal totalitarian dictatorship that takes over the United States and forces religious beliefs on women. Women that are fertile are, systemically raped and then forced to bear those children, the products of their rape. It's a brutal book, but it is also a very strong message for women's rights, religious freedom, all this kind of stuff. If you'd like to see further discussion of that, I also have a video about 10 or 15 minutes long that goes into an in-depth discussion around the banning of The Handmaid's Tale. Question 2, which books do you want to read that have been historically banned or burned? I have a list a mile long of books that have been controversial for one reason or another, and we could honestly spend the next 20 minutes just talking about this particular question. Instead of giving you this insane list, I'm just gonna focus on books that I own copies of and hope to read within like the next 6 months. So I have Beloved and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Both talk about issues regarding race, slavery, and systemic racism, within the United States. I have The Glass Castle and the follow-up Half Broke Horses by Jeanette Walls. Both of those books deal with abuse, poverty, and some difficult topics. I have A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo by Jill Twist. This book is amazing to me. If you're unfamiliar with this at all, please go Google this book and find out about it, because it is like the most amazing political trolling that I've seen in a long time. And it's for a good cause, so all the better. I also want to read Speak by Lori Halse Anderson, which I believe is about her sexual assault and recovery from it and how it affects her. It was banned because of, the violent sexual assault. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I have this sitting on my shelf in my bedroom. This deals with racial issues in the United States, specifically police brutality towards Black people. And Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. I have that on this bookshelf over here to my left. Found it in a little free library recently. Apparently there is some difficult content in it and it was banned in a few communities here in the United States. Question 3, what's your favorite book that the Nazis burned? So this was a very interesting question. While I know a lot about current banned books, I don't know as much about historically banned and burned books, especially like maybe prior to like 1980s, because I haven't done a ton of research into it. So this led me down a whole rabbit hole. So I found out that there was one mass burning that is like the biggest book burning in the history of the Holocaust. There was many more book burnings aside from this, but this was just like the most major book burning event. It happened on May 10th, 1933. So students at 34 different German universities got together and burned over 25,000 books across the country. They focused on targeting Jewish authors, Russian authors, American authors, anybody that was considered to be socialist, Marxist, or was like politically subversive at the time. The list of authors that had books that were burned by the Nazis is extraordinarily long. It's almost as long as the banned book list as a whole. And it includes a remarkable amount of authors who are well known and well respected today. Some of the authors that I found on their particular list were Hemingway, Helen Keller, H.G. Wells, Jack London, Aldous Huxley, Leon Trotsky, and Einstein. So going through that, like, I didn't find specific lists of books that they burned, just the authors. So from there, I kind of picked one of my favorite books of one of the authors that was frequently burned by the Nazis. So the book that I picked was The Call of the Wild by Jack London. I read that when I was young, and I wrote a book report on it, actually. I want to say in like 4th or 5th grade, maybe. It is interesting because the Nazis weren't the first people to burn this book or ban this book. It was actually banned between 1920 and 1930 in both Yugoslavia and Italy. The reason that it was banned initially was because it had socialist themes. So the Nazis began burning it as well for the socialist themes. But the thing that I find very interesting is that they also cited that it was animal brutality because of the savage treatment of the main character, Buck. I find the hypocrisy of a Nazi who is literally committing mass genocide, burning people to death, inflicting the worst possible crimes on humanity imaginable, but they're upset about a dog being mistreated in a fictional book. Like, the loopholes, they're just, I don't have words. That is probably my favorite book in terms of books that were burned by the Nazis. Question 4, what is your favorite book about book burnings or bannings? There's 2 books that I've read that are related to book burnings and bannings. The first one is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is about the Holocaust, and Liesel, the main character, is someone who ends up loving to read and protecting books and hiding books and learning the power of word. And it's, she's quietly subversive, and it's a very interesting and moving and touching book. I'm sure most people have read it by this point, but if you haven't, 100% should be on your list. And then in a more classic sense, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is about a character named Guy Montag, and he works as a firefighter. So he goes out and he lights books on fire and burns them. And in this society, in this story, everybody has TV screens all over their house, like not one TV, but like multiple TVs, and there's just constant news, but it's like little snippets, and it's all because people have such short attention spans that they can't focus. And the rulers of society don't want people to educate themselves. They don't want them to read and learn. They want them to be completely distracted by these little, sound bites that are flashing all over these TV screens. And as the story progresses, Guy realizes, like, hey, books shouldn't be burned. Like, this is wrong. And he starts trying to save books. And then the controversy really starts. It's a very, very interesting book. Well done and super unique. Another book that I actually have right here that I believe is about protecting books from being banned and the value of books, the lengths that people do go to hide books when dictatorships are trying to get rid of them, is The Librarian of Auschwitz by Antonio Iturbe, translated by Lilith Zekulin Thwaites. This book is, if I remember correctly, about a 14-year-old girl named Dita. She's imprisoned in Auschwitz, and she is actually entrusted with, I believe, like 12 books that the prisoners have managed to smuggle into the camps. And she goes to extraordinary lengths to protect and save those books. I have not read this one yet, but I've heard good things, and this is another book that, has that theme of protecting literature from dictatorships. So I'm hoping to get to this before the end of the year. Question 5, what was the most recent book burning you'd heard of? So this was an interesting question, also another rabbit hole type answer. So I am not really aware of any book burnings since like the 1990s, early 2000s. Like, I remember people burning Twilight and Harry Potter because of the inspiration of like witchcraft and devilry and stuff like that. But I feel like I remember that being like long, long ago. So this question actually inspired me to Google modern book burnings and see if there was anything more recent than that. Because while I hear about bans all the time, I haven't heard that much about burnings. And then I found that it wasn't 6 years ago, not even like a year ago, like basically 6 months ago. There was a book burning on February 2nd, 2022 in Tennessee. So a Mount Juliet pastor and pro-Trump conspiracy theorist named Greg Locke burned popular books Twilight and Harry Potter, and he also cited the witchcraft and devilry aspects of the book. He also made sure to record his reprehensible actions and put them on Facebook. So you can actually find video of this idiotic, nonsensical bullshit. And he made sure to like tell people he has no plans to unalive himself and like a whole bunch of wild stuff. But basically he burned books because he doesn't understand what witchcraft means and doesn't understand that witchcraft isn't even a malicious or negative thing. You know. Anyways, try to make sense of the nonsensical. That was the most recent book burning I could find here in the United States, February 2nd, 2022. Question 6, have you ever had a book stolen, confiscated, or destroyed by a bad faith actor? I have not personally had anyone steal or damage my books because I don't allow people into my house that I can't trust around my stuff. But I do know of 2 little free libraries recently that have had their entire stocks wiped out that I want to talk about. Both of these are on Instagram. If you support the reading community and little free libraries and you're on Instagram, please go follow both of these little free libraries. Both of them have had their stocks wiped out and could use donations. So if you have an extra $10 to spare to send them a book or something, please go take a look. So the first one I want to talk about is the Little Queer Library of Waltham. And Little Queer Library Waltham has had their whole entire stock of books wiped out more than once. Unfortunately, because they like to supply their neighborhood with books supporting the LGBTQIA community, there are hateful people that come and steal all their books in malicious and spiteful ways. You know, it's not like a kid coming and taking a bunch of books and like that's excited to read them. It's like adults wiping out their stock to prevent them from providing diverse literature to their communities. Their recent wipeout was just a couple months back. I know that a lot of people have donated stock to them, sent them books, and helped them to stock up, but you know, I know they can always use more books, and they have a specially curated wish list of books for their library. So if you feel invested in providing diverse literature specifically, please check them out. And then the second one is littlefreelibrary.Quail Place, and they're in San Diego. My mom knows their Little Free Library and knows them because, you know, she goes around and visits all the Little Free Libraries in San Diego County, and she noticed a post like a couple days ago where somebody came in and literally cleared out their whole Little Free Library. They had a security camera and they caught a picture of the guy like walking away with just bags of books. Now, we don't know specifically if he's going to destroy the books because he didn't like what they were providing or if he was just stealing all their books, because either way, they had their entire stock of books wiped out by one person just a couple days ago. So they could also use donations of books. If you happen to have some books you would want to send them or you're interested in donating books, check out their Instagram link below. Question 7, is there any book offensive enough for you to burn? This is kind of a double-edged question for me. Are there books that personally I would like to burn? Certainly, Mein Kampf comes to mind. There's many political books that are just like atrocious. I've seen plenty of books that defend racism, defend bigotry, defend xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, etc. that I find absolutely detestable and worthy of all the malice and scorn. That said, do I believe in banning and burning books? No. Even though this content is atrocious and hateful and is deserving of ridicule and derision, even though it should be critiqued, I do not find it appropriate to burn books. I think that it's not my place to dictate to the population what they should be reading, just as it's no one else's business to dictate what I'm reading. And I think once you start burning one book because you find it detestable, it's a slippery slope into what's happening now, where this community is banning this book because they don't like the LGBTQIA messaging, and this community over here is banning this book because they don't like the messaging in regards to, historically racist events in the United States. You know, like, it just gets really tricky because you can easily go from like, oh, we're banning these handful of legitimately detestable books to everyone using that as justification to ban whatever they want. And I don't think that that's appropriate or okay. Question 8, do you believe there's a problem with digital book burning in our digital age? This was a really interesting question for me. So I don't really know that much about digital book burning. And so I did a quick Google search to see like is this a real problem? I've never heard of it. So what I found is that this is a term that seems to be tossed around by people when they don't like that someone doesn't want to publish their book. So Amazon, for example, has a pretty easy publishing process. You could self-publish on Amazon. And during the pandemic, Amazon made the decision to no longer provide access to books that spread misinformation regarding COVID-19. So things that had like wild conspiracy theories, unverified medical advice in regards to the pandemic, things like that. They decided that it was in the best interest of both their company and society to not provide access to those materials. And then later they even expanded that into hateful content. So people that published books, specifically books that were anti-trans, Amazon removed them. Basically, authors of books that were like actively and openly anti-trans or homophobic or racist or xenophobic or what have you, just hateful shit in general, Amazon decided to remove that. And so these authors started saying, oh, this is digital book burning, you're getting rid of my material. And I call bullshit. So first of all, there is a massive difference between a company saying, we do not want to publish your content. So like if you go to Hachette and you provide them your manuscript and they read that and they go, hey, this shit's really horrible and distasteful and we don't want to publish this. This is not book burning. This is a company going, this doesn't align with our views. We don't want to publish this hateful content. Just like if you go to Amazon and you publish something that breaks their terms of service, then they have the right to remove it. It's their company website. They're not preventing you from writing the distasteful book. They're just preventing you from publishing it on their website. The reality is the people writing these horrible, distasteful, offensive books about, conspiracy theories, about transgender people, about sexuality, about race, where they're just basically using a topic to spew vile venom and hatred. They're going to self-publish anyways. They're going to find some obscure publishing house to print their book just to make a point. So Amazon turning them down is not the equivalent of book burning. It is not a targeted government campaign to get rid of their books. It is a company making an ethical decision in regards to what their company is going to provide. So for me, the digital book burning at this point is a hoax. If all of a sudden the government starts mandating that certain books not be available online and that nobody's allowed to read them and deleting every copy that ever exists, then we could rediscuss digital book burning. But at this point in time, mostly it's just offensive, atrocious people whining because people are telling them that they're offensive and atrocious. Number 9, what book did you think would cause a lot of controversy but didn't? So there's 2 books that I've read recently that I'm kind of surprised there's not a little more controversy around. So that's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong and The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emeze. So both of these books deal with incredibly difficult topics. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous deals with Ocean Vuong's experience as an immigrant family growing up in the United States. It deals with racism where he's the only Vietnamese child in a mostly white school and he's bullied and treated terribly for it. He's bullied for his sexuality, and there is sex that occurs in the book, all sorts of things that usually really conservative areas in the United States tend to ban. I haven't heard anything about it. And then The Death of Vivek Oji deals with gender identity, sexuality, controversial relationships, things like that. And the same thing, typically in the United States, anything that revolves around sex, gender, or race is a recipe for banning. So I'm kind of surprised that both of those books haven't received any controversy that I'm aware of. But I'm glad, and I think perhaps it's because the people that are reading these books are typically going to be older. They're not marketed towards young adults, so you're not likely to find them in school libraries. But also the people that I know that have read them are people that are into books, and most book people are fairly open-minded. I think that's why there's not as much controversy. I think if they started being introduced into school libraries and public libraries in a bigger sense, or they were added to school curriculums, I think you would sadly see a lot of pushback in conservative areas. Question 10, if the authorities were coming for your books, what would you do? So this question doesn't provide any sort of time frame for when these authorities are coming for my books. So if I have an hour, I know that in an hour SWAT's gonna kick down the door and steal all my books. I think I grab a backpack or two and take my favorite books, the ones that mean the most, and put them in my backpack and haul ass. And then I would probably hide them somewhere. There are lots of places in Nevada and California that I could hide them if I needed to. If I had, say, like 24 hours notice, I would probably spend that 24 hours packaging up all my books, loading them all into my car, and driving them somewhere to hide them, because my book collection means a lot to me. Part of the reason that my book collection is important for me is because I think books are so important, whether fictional or non-fictional, are so important in broadening our minds, right? Through books, we can experience cultures, experiences, places that we've never been to or experienced. It broadens our horizons. It challenges us to challenge the narrative that we've been given, right? So like, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what country you grew up in, no matter what culture you grew up in, you've been presented a narrative. Your country has presented you a political viewpoint. The religions you grew up around provided you a potentially religious viewpoint. Like the way that your family raised you provided you a perspective on the world and life. And by reading people's books and other people's experiences, we broaden those perspectives. I also feel like fiction, for example, broadens our creativity, broadens our imagination. It's an escape that allows people to de-stress and decompress. Like there's so many important aspects to books. And so for me, like my library collection at home, my books, it's not just having pretty books on the shelves. It's not just, oh, there's nice stuff to read. Like to me, this is like a lifetime of learning, a lifetime of challenging my beliefs, a lifetime of continuing to grow as a human. And for that reason, I think I would protect my book collection to the best of my ability. Obviously, I don't think I would die for my books, but if there was any way to save my books when these mysterious authorities are coming for them, absolutely I would. And finally, the last bit of it, we're gonna tag some people. So I'm super excited. I usually only tag like maybe 2 or 3 people, but because I feel really strongly about banning and burning books, or rather not banning and burning books, and because this tag has a lot of really interesting, thoughtful questions, I'm gonna actually tag like 10 people. I know that this is a little more than usual, but I hope each of you will consider doing this video. So I'll be tagging Steve Donahue, Books and Cooks, Criminale, Enter the Book, Gina Stanier Books, Bookish, Another Bibliophile Reads, Venus Escapes to Read, Tom L.A. Books, Green Eggs and Sam Books, Lola's La La Land, and Book Hunt. All of them are excellent channels. I will link all of them below in the description. So please go through and follow each of them if you don't already. They all have very unique and different channels and provide different content, but all of them fantastic in their own right. So thank you so much for joining me in this banned and burned book tag. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it. Let me know down below, what is a banned or burned book that you love? Tell me all about it. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below. That way we see each other again in future bookish videos. Again, I'm Caitlin Bandy. This is my channel, BandysBooks. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.